welcome to another episode of the Coffee and Podcast, where specialty coffee means so much more. We are on a quest to cultivate freedom for victims of human trafficking while drinking some really, really great coffee. I'm your host, Philip Klayman. I'm also one of the founders of Three Tree Coffee in Statesboro, Georgia. And it's summertime. In South Georgia, it gets pretty hot. In Canada, we'll find out in just a minute. But in South Georgia, it gets pretty warm. But on top of that, people start traveling. We're going on summer trips. We're going on beach trips. And if you're a coffee snob, you have a challenge here. How do you get and ensure that you have really great coffee to the place you're going? I know this is something I've struggled with at times, and it seems like Hasty Coffee has an answer to it. Instant coffee. I'm excited to hear some more about it. Today, we have Ben McGaghey on, who's the co-founder of Hasty Coffee. They claim to make instant coffee that doesn't taste like instant coffee. Pretty bold claim, but I can verify it's true because us at Three Tree have started using their process and co-packing with them, and we're really pleased so far. So I'm excited to learn more about their process and what they do. Ben, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. So let's just get started with kind of you personally. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a Canadian, originally from the East Coast in St. John, New Brunswick, but I've lived in Alberta most of my life. Yeah, so I live in High River, Alberta, which is about half an hour south of Calgary, which would be kind of the major city around here. And yeah, I've been working in coffee for almost 10 years.
Did you start with Hasty, or what was your journey in coffee?
So I actually went to Bible college when I got out of high school, and I met my wife there, and we decided we were going to get married. And so I needed to find a job. And so I started working at a cafe. And that was kind of how my first initial coffee exposure happened. And they just happened to be a wholesale account it was a little cafe called Sorso Coffee in Airdrie, Alberta. And they were a wholesale account for Rosso Coffee, who's a pretty big roaster here in Calgary. And so, yeah, I kind of got connected with those guys and then moved around to a couple different things in between that job. And I started working at Rosso Coffee, learned a lot while I was there. Cole Turode, one of the owners, he showed me like a lot of stuff. And I was pretty eager to learn because I started tasting different coffees and I was like, oh, this is so interesting, like natural coffees and coffees with like acidity and like, they don't just taste like carbon. And that got me really interested in that. And eventually I started working at Phil and Sebastian Coffee, which is, I think, where I did my longest barista stint and really learned a ton there. Really kind of pressed into all the different coffee training sessions and tastings and everything that they hosted there. And they're a very like scientific approach to coffee company. So yeah, I really had the opportunity to learn some cool stuff. Yeah, so what got me into Hasty was people would come into the cafe and they'd be like, hey, so I got the scale, I got the fancy kettle, I got, the good beans, I got a good grinder, and my coffee still sucks. Like, what's up? And so it just got me thinking about coffee accessibility. And we saw a couple companies in the States that were making this product, kind of the original pioneers of instant specialty. And I thought, well, I think we could probably do this in Canada. How hard could it be? Turns out very hard. Not a fun thing to start up, just roast coffee. But yeah, so we bought a little, like the worst freeze dryer imaginable and started playing around with just different profiles and extractions and everything. Arrived at something we thought was a pretty good product, rented some space in a little commercial kitchen in Calgary and started producing. I think we made like 30 to 50 cups of coffee every like 3 or 4 days or something like that. So yeah, our pre-order, we were booked out for like 2 months because we could hardly make any, and it just ended up being a lot harder to scale than we thought. So yeah.
That's really interesting because actually, similarly, when I graduated college in 2011, my wife was still in school in our college town. And so kind of a similar scenario. I just needed a job, and 2011 was not a good time to try and get jobs. And so ended up working at a local cafe. I didn't even like coffee. They didn't ask me in the interview if I did or not. It just sounded fun to connect with people. And it was in that job where I really started, like you were saying, having those experiences of, wow, these taste wildly different and they're all delicious. And they don't just taste like, as you said, carbon and burn and char, and not even near as bitter, right? I mean, so those experiences were so formative of me saying, wow, I want other people to experience this. But that's cool that you took it a step further and said, it's not just about can people have these experiences, but how accessible can these experiences be? And this is actually kind of a part of a series we're going to be doing that's all about convenience in coffee, but maybe a better word would be accessibility in coffee, because it is challenging. There's so many stages of specialty coffee where things have to be peak quality that it can be really difficult to have all those components aligned. So I just find that really neat about your story. So, you wake up most days. What is your go-to coffee routine? Do you drink the same thing every day? Do you always like to change it up? What's your coffee routine?
I've gravitated to pretty much just drinking instant coffee all the time, just because we're like, it's fast. I mean, I take my kids to school in the morning and then stumble into my office half awake and just make an instant pack as soon as I get there. Yeah, with what we're doing, I'm constantly just tasting concentrates and QCing batches and everything like that. Sometimes it takes a little bit of the enjoyment out of coffee, but the first cup of the day is mine before before anything else happens. I just sit back and enjoy it.
Nice. I can
Yeah.
resonate with that. I was actually just talking with our roaster recently about, frequently we'll hear the comments of, man, it must be so great to be able to drink coffee, all the time. I feel very great. I'm very grateful. I really am. I enjoy what I do, and I think it's an incredible industry. But at the same time, I would say most of the time I don't get to drink what I want. I need to drink what I need to drink, whether it's trialing something new or cupping coffees in the roasting side. And you get a lot more bad samples than good ones, So I like what you said. The first cup is mine. So, you mentioned Hasty Coffee and kind of why you started it. We were chatting a little bit before we started recording, and I found out, I didn't know this, that this is really a family gig. So was this your idea, your brother's, your dad's? Who kind of pioneered this? And yeah, how did that start?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the pioneer. I'm the coffee brains behind the organization. But yeah, like when I started first playing around with the idea of instant coffee, I just started mentioning it to see what the perception was, and people were like, "That sounds really cool. I just don't quite understand it." And so I pitched it to my dad and my brother, and they were like, "That's really interesting." Dad, like my dad, he's always been an entrepreneur, and he loved the idea. He was like, "Yeah, we should let's do it right now." And I was like, "Hold up, we got to do a little bit more market research here and stuff first." Yeah, and my brother, I think he's a little bit more anxious, probably a little bit more hesitant about entrepreneurship. He uh, he was selling trucks, and I think he was getting pretty bored with his job and like transport trucks. And I somehow Dad and I convinced him to kind of go in on our freeze dryer and start playing around with the profiles and extractions and stuff. And yeah, so that was kind of just like an organic way of coming together. We all just thought it was really like a really cool idea, and then once we started actually making the product, we were like, okay, we're on to something here, and then we all kind of jumped into it together. Um, yeah, and then my wife Jill, she does like all of our social media, and she runs most of the packaging part of Hasty here as well. A lot of the online store, everything. She's just a very dynamic and energetic relational person, where the rest of us are not as much like that. Yeah, so it wasn't like we were like, oh, we're going to start this cool family business. It just kind of organically became a family business. Everybody was kind of looking for that next transition in life, and yeah, that's how it happened.
Man, I've talked with lots of business owners, and some people really struggle to work in a family dynamic, right? Because you're blending personal and business, and you have a disagreement about a product at work. That's one level, but then you go home and there's your wife or there's your brother, and it's like, well, are we still frustrated? What's going on here? Have you? I mean, a business is challenging on its own. Have you found it more challenging to do it with family? Obviously, it's being recorded, so there's probably some politically correct answers here. But I mean, or had there been some challenges to overcome in that? I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, we're all like very different people. I think, my family, we can work together because we kind of just yell at each other and we like get over it. Where I think a lot of people kind of hold it in and just let it like boil up. But yeah, I mean, we just like, we fight about politics and whatever else throughout the day and all yell at each other, and it works. It works.
And it
But yeah,
works.
we're
Honesty.
pretty,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty like forgiving people too. Like, I mean, it's a lot of you just can't let your heart get too hard towards someone else. You have to kind of forgive and move on, and takes a lot of self awareness and a lot of just grace for everyone else. And it's challenging. It can be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's incredible. Imagine, well, I know. So my wife and I started our business together, and she's not as involved in operations anymore. We have a few children, and she homeschools her children. That's something she's really passionate about. But I miss her being a part of it more actively, and she misses being a part of it more actively. But I know I've talked with plenty of other people that find that dynamic really challenging, and so neat to see. I love the comment on self awareness. If you have self awareness and humility, there's a much greater ability to be able to forgive and work with one another.
Totally.
So, I mean, I'm sure it's grown a lot since the early days. About how much instant are you making now per week, per month, however you want to measure it?
Yeah. So like in the little 4 gram serving type things, like I think we can make about 70 to 80,000 a month of those. I think is somewhere between 4,000 pounds of coffee that we process every month. Not every month is that busy, but a lot of it depends on the time of year. Like right now, we're clocked until whenever things slow down for summer. Yeah, that's probably roughly what we make, and we're looking to double, maybe even quadruple that by 2026.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then, something that really drew us to Hasty, because we looked at a few different companies, and there was a few things. One thing that we really liked is that you freeze dry the brew, correct? I mean, so, and I don't
Hmm.
even understand this process in full. I just know that as we were reading about it, we said this seems to make a lot of sense in terms of quality and freshness and so forth and so on. So just maybe explain a little bit about that freeze drying process and what benefits does it bring to the cup?
Yeah. So I shouldn't say most. I mean, lots of commoditized instant products are freeze dried, but a lot of the things you'll see on a grocery store shelf are spray dried. So they have like a gas heated chamber and like some sort of spraying system. So they take a very concentrated coffee, probably like 50% TDS or something like that, and they spray it into the chamber. And it's like probably like 400 degrees or something in there. And it evaporates the last bit of water from the coffee. And so the high temperature really affects the flavor and the aroma of the coffee in a really dramatic kind of way. I mean, kind of like imagine just boiling coffee on your stove for a few minutes, and it's gonna make it taste terrible, or microwaving coffee. I mean, same kind of degradation of product quality, but it's a much cheaper and faster process to spray dry, where it takes couple minutes, where freeze drying can take a day or two depending on your setup. And
Nice.
yeah, freeze drying uses really low temperatures and vacuum to really preserve what's going in. You always get a certain amount of like affected flavor. Like I find within like freeze drying, and I'm sure spray drying is the same effect, a little more dramatized, but you lose a little bit of acidity in the coffee because those are more volatile compounds that I think they sort of sublimate with the water. Like you can smell like the ice after you're done freeze drying. The ice kind of smells like acidic, not like vinegar acidic. Like it's hard to describe. I mean, it smells like coffee acid. So yeah, you lose a certain like quantity of acidity in the process, and we do everything we can to mitigate that. But overall, freeze drying is a significantly better process than spray drying for flavor quality.
And it seems like a differentiation for you is kind of the lower temperatures using vacuum and pressures maybe to augment that process, but not using high temps to preserve some of that flavor. Is that correct?
Yeah, it applies like a really steady, like low heat to sublimate the water instead of evaporate it. So it's just a much more gentle process.
Okay. I imagine there's tons of machinery in this sort of operation because, I mean, freeze drying can't be done by hand. I'm sure there's a lot of equipment. I'm sure there may be a lot of downtime. I mean, is maintenance and repairs a major part of the struggle of this business, or not so much? It all seems just to kind of work okay.
You have no idea. Yeah, I mean, like equipment here. I think it's like a challenge as a smaller company. Everything's designed for like massive, like industrial sized operations. So buying smaller equipment, a lot of the time, like we have to get really creative and just put stuff together too. So we're not buying like, you know, bespoke equipment from a manufacturer in Germany or something. We're, slapping prefab parts together because none of us are welders or engineers or anything. So yeah, stuff breaks down quite a bit. Like one of our systems here is just, it has been a nightmare for the last 4 years, but we've got it sorted out pretty well now. But yeah, like I think one November, like we were just tons of Christmas orders, and we were super, super, super backed up already. And every single piece of equipment that we had in the shop broke down within about a 2-week span. And some of it was easy to fix and kind of get up and running again. And other things were like waiting for parts to ship in from all over the world to fix. So yeah, I mean, it's constant maintenance. Dad is he's worked in like McCain's potato plants and stuff like that. So he's pretty good at fixing equipment, and he has a whole different skill set than Josh and I. So we're pretty thankful to have someone who knows how to work that stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that just as we were talking, I figured, I just know some of our own challenges with equipment, and of course, any sort of manufacturing business, I'm sure, has this challenge. But I can't imagine. We were talking about what 80,000 packets, or 4,000 to 7,000 pounds of coffee for what is a relatively small family business. Which, once again, I'm surprised, because in our interactions with you, even up to today, have felt a lot bigger and more experienced. That's a compliment. More professional, right? It's like everything's been moving very smoothly. So it's kind of neat to hear behind the scenes. It's a little more mom and pop. But that also means that some of the challenges can be that much more exaggerated, right? It can be really difficult. I know we one time had our roaster go down. Go down enough to where we couldn't roast coffee. Let's put it that way. And I remember we had about a week and a half timer that went off as soon as that happened. We have to figure this out within the next week and a half, or else we have to go buy beans from someone else, or we don't have coffee, or what does that mean? And it took the full week and a half. It was the last minute, and it all came through. But so I don't envy you in that. I'm sure there's a lot of challenges there. You mentioned accessibility. For those listening who are maybe not aware, specialty coffee is frequently talked about in waves. There's this first wave about commodity buying. There's a second wave about coffee shop focus. I'm running through these fast, but kind of the coffee shop gathering focus. Third wave, ethical source, know the producer, transparency focused. So many people have been claiming what is the fourth wave and fifth wave, and some people may even say we're on the sixth wave at this point of what are the new iterations of specialty coffee. I know I've heard multiple people talk about accessibility, because over time, specialty coffee has gotten so premium in a way that it sometimes doesn't feel accessible, and sometimes it's actually not accessible. And so I find it really interesting that was kind of your attention to the coffee shop customers, was how do we make this more accessible? And so I guess I'm curious, fast forward to today, how much do you see convenience and accessibility really driving the specialty market? Have you seen a big shift? Have you not really seen a shift? What are your thoughts on that?
Totally. Yeah. I think like the accessible coffee market is growing rapidly. I mean, you see this with cold brew. I don't know the exact numbers, but I mean, it's grown like 20 times plus over the last 10 years. You see canned coffee popping up everywhere. Less so in Canada. I think it's just a bit more geographically challenging to move large volumes of liquid product. But yeah, like, I mean, there's stuff like commenters popping up, which seems like a logistical nightmare to me as well. But, also potentially a really good product. Instant coffee to me is like, I've tried steep packs and drip kits and all of that type of thing. And I think you get a lot more fresh tasting coffee with an instant process if it's done the right way, which is also very hard, especially with some of the specialty instant manufacturers that are getting larger. I think they're just running into more challenges where if you've got to make, 1 million cups of coffee every month, like what concessions do you have to make in your processing to make that happen as well? But yeah, I mean, our market's growing like crazy. Our company, I think we doubled our output last year, and we're hoping to double again this year. I don't know if we'll quite double, but yeah, there's just more demand all the time. We have more reach outs just in the last 3 months than I think we have in like the prior 12 months. So it's an interesting space to be in. If you look at how people consume coffee all over the world, I think instant coffee is the most consumed form of coffee anywhere, but it's not a great tasting product. So most people who I mean, in more developed countries where we're interested in coffee, I mean, specifically North America, people drink a ton of instant coffee. In Europe, like that's a pretty normal part of life there. But looking for a more high quality version of instant coffee, I think the future is instant. It keeps forever. It's super easy. Even myself, like I'm quite picky with my coffee drinking habits. I'm very particular about certain what I like and what I don't like. And I've just kind of navigated to drinking instant coffee every day because I'm so busy, and it just makes sense. But I do love being able to go to a cafe and get a fresh cup of coffee as well. And I don't think that, will ever disappear. I think how people consume instant in or consume coffee in a busy world where everything is just kind of getting more expensive and harder. I think specialty instant's going to grow like crazy.
And so much more fast paced, right? People
Yeah,
being in a hurry, still wanting that quality, great experience, but having it fast. And it's funny that you mentioned, I've always called it commandeer. I think you said commenter. I'm not exactly
yeah.
sure
I
which.
don't know how you say it.
I don't know either, but I actually love, I mean, I love the product, but even right there, you mentioned the Futures Instant, because in a way I mean, it's a convenient focused coffee. And for those who don't know, it's a flash frozen, from my understanding. They brew it and then flash
Hmm.
freeze it in these little capsules, and it has to stay frozen so that basically when you add liquid to dilute it, you have a fresh cup of coffee. And I love the product in terms of flavor. It tastes so good. Logistics are really challenging. I've had a few times where I've ordered from them and the pods arrived completely melted and warm. And
Yeah.
that's questionable, right? It's just like,
In
what do I
Canada,
do
it's
with this?
impossible.
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, you could have it like a plant in Toronto or Montreal, and you could service those two provinces, but like the Western provinces, Eastern provinces, there's no way.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it speaks to what you're saying, right? With this freeze dried instant coffee product, it's shelf stable. It will last a long time. It packages
Hmm.
small. You know what? I'm going to go and do a little quick reveal because some of our customers don't even know that we have this yet. So we have partnered with Hasty to provide our own instant coffee. And we used a Colombian collab lot coffee. And I share that because this is probably our most popular coffee we've had in a long time. People absolutely love it. There it is. Hasty Coffee helped us put this together. The Columbia collab lot. You open it up and you got a little packet in here, little instructions on the back. Rip it open, pour it in, add hot or cold water. Boom, it's done. And it's incredible. Like, Ben, it's phenomenal. And I know y'all have been enjoying it as well. We are stunned. And we actually served it to some of our staff, and many of them said, this is not far off from a pour over of this coffee. I mean, it is just so complex and fruity and delicious. So kudos. The process seems incredible. I mean, we are super pleased with the product. I have one more question for you. It kind of was an elephant in the email, I think, for a little bit, because it's just a challenging time. You're in Canada, we're in the States, and you and I both were caught off guard by tariffs. It has been very challenging for our organization because we are getting a tariff charge from all over. Every coffee we
Mm.
order, there's now a tariff charge. Of course, with this instant coffee, I'm sure you're experiencing a similar struggle, whether it's on the sales front and you have a lot of clients in the US, or maybe some of your own inputs and the supplies you're getting. How much have tariffs in this tariff season affected your business?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think thankfully most of our large businesses in Canada and a lot of the business, like the larger business that we have in the States, is kind of committed tariffs or not, which has been really helpful. But definitely what it's done is just created a lot of uncertainty, which makes it really difficult for us to know exactly where to put our efforts. Thankfully, we do qualify under the USMCA agreement because we actually manufacture the product in Canada. So we can like apply for preferential tariffs for each order that we sent down. I think we have one that kind of went through, and I think I just messed the paperwork up or something for a couple of orders. But now what's happening, like logistics have become more complicated. So I mean, I do notice the FDA has been a lot more aggressive. Like if I didn't file a prior notice, you know, at the correct time or something, like our packages will just get RTS randomly. We ship a lot to one company in California. So yeah, we've had a bit of an interesting time with that, like just logistically, and totally forgot the other thing I was going to say. But yeah, a lot of uncertainty and a lot of just like what's going to happen here, And we've always talked about potentially opening up an American branch, but then now that that's also a huge risk because we're again a very small company. If we have an American facility, and we'll say we order a container of Colombian coffee, and something happens with Colombia, and now there's 100% tariffs on Colombia because buddy's mad, and now we're up the creek because we can't absorb these like massive costs. And I think that's like that for a lot of small businesses in the States, especially coffee companies, where tariffs on all coffee basically, unless I don't know if Mexican coffee is included in the USMCA, but yeah, it's challenging times. I'm sure everyone's feeling it a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and we've had similar experiences, in terms of
Hmm.
we've had just lots of unexpected charges come out, right, over just the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then, as you mentioned, the uncertainty, right? I mean, it's just challenging the logistics. Oh my goodness. So even if there aren't tariffs, we're seeing so many more packages get lost or delays or
Totally.
things like that. So
Warehouses are just plugged up with a ton of packages with nowhere to go, and they're charging like massive storage fees on everything all of a sudden. It's crazy times.
yeah. Well, and so for anyone who's listening, I guess one of the reasons I wanted to ask about this is because I know me and Ben had a lot of back and forth just trying to figure this out of, is there going to be a tariff? Is there not going to be a tariff? Oh my gosh, there is a tariff. Wait, we think we can get this exempted. Wait, we can't, right? I think it's important for people to know, this box looks really great on a shelf and I'm super pumped and I'm very pleased with it, but there's so much that goes into these things. And when you're a small business, when you're a family run business, it's just really challenging. And so I really encourage all of our listeners just to have a healthy dose of grace and attention for the local businesses, right? Because they're the ones that don't have all of the departments to figure this out. It's the founders jumping on a call saying, I don't know what's going on, but we need to figure this out. And I'm grateful, Ben. Thank you just for all the back and forth we had to kind of get this finalized. And we are really pleased with the product. And also, thank you for being on the show. We will end it with this. What do you think is next for Hasty Coffee as you look ahead into the future? What do you think's next?
Yeah, so I mean, we are super instant coffee focused. What we're always working on is making specialty instant more affordable. It's a very expensive process, very expensive packaging, and there's just tons of input costs. So reducing input costs and labor that goes into the process, so we can offer a cheaper service, so we can reach bigger markets, hotels, airlines. The other thing is making it better. There's a couple more things that we'd like to incorporate into our process to still increase the quality just that extra little bit. I'd love to have it, 95 to 100% of what you get in a pour over coffee. I don't know how close we can get, but that's what we're aiming for. And then, yeah, we're kind of exploring some other RTD markets, cans, liquid concentrates, stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of where we're headed in the future.
Very exciting. Well, Ben, love what you've built. We love the product. And I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Awesome. Yeah, we love the product too, and we're really looking forward to working with you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, sweet. Yeah, thank you. And to all of our listeners, go check out this instant coffee, instant craft coffee in partnership with Hasty. You can find it online. You can find it in any of our shops. It really tastes phenomenal. I encourage you to give it a try. I'm your host, Philip Klayman. And to all of our listeners, thank you for helping us cultivate freedom.